You are listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 18. Today is for my fellow introverted souls. Do you shy back from experiences or opportunities out of fear of putting yourself out there? Do you tend to fall on the sensitive side and get your feelings hurt a little more often than you would like? Do you avoid parties or big events because big crowds kind of stress you out? Well, I hear you, my friend, and you are not alone. My guest today is also an introvert and sensitive, yet creative soul. She has experienced it firsthand and shares her advice on how we can step out of our comfort zones and live happy, fulfilling lives. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, hopeful romantic and founder of Revue Blanc. I've found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests, to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Hello, friends. Today I am joined by Christy Vale, life strategy coach and podcast host of Connected with Christy Vale. Through her own personal experiences, she has found her purpose in life and through it works with women who may identify as shy, sensitive, introverted, and creative to leverage their unique gifts and live more lightness and confidence and show up in a bigger way in the world. So let's dive on in and learn how we can step out of our comfort zone and live to our highest potentials. So welcome, Christy. I am so honored to have you as my guest. So excited to learn all about your journey, your passion for helping women, especially because I identify as an introverted person. I can be very sensitive as well. So I am so eager to learn about all your experiences and advice. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, if you can share a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me and for the lovely introduction. I am so excited to be here and I'm so excited to talk to another introvert as always. So I am from Vancouver, originally from Port Moody, and I actually have a background in design. So about 10 or 12 years ago, I got into interior design school immediately after high school. And but behind the scenes of that, I've always been doing this self-work. And so I grew up a pretty sensitive and introverted kid, and it didn't feel easy. And so I started finding different people. It kind of started with like Oprah and then kind of streamlined to Tony Robbins and then just expanded into a lot of other teachings and courses that I've taken. And it's just changed my life in the most dramatic way. So before I go on about that, on a personal level, I just had a really big summer. I turned 30, which is so exciting. And I just got engaged to my longtime partner, and we couldn't be more excited. So yeah, it's been a really big year.
Summer. Yeah,
summer, totally.
So a lot of changes. You're going into a whole new stage of life in your 30s.
Yeah.
Which I found personally being 36, that you really come into your own in your 30s. You really kind of identify who you are, what your purpose is, even more so. Mm-hmm. And you kind of settle into being comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And it's so different. It's so exciting. So I really can't wait to see kind of how your journey is in your 30s and kind of what comes up for you.
Me too. Thank you.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to start from the beginning. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your experience being introverted and sensitive growing up, because there are a lot of people like that, especially me. I was definitely introverted, and kind of showing up in the world in any way was very scary. So what did you struggle with most? And did your family and friends try to help you with that? Did they kind of just let you be? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, so I think across the board, whether it was like elementary school, middle school, or high school, I would struggle, especially in big groups. I didn't really have the self-awareness, but I was really good one-on-one or in small groups. So I usually had like a really close best friend or like a couple of close friends. But I feel like societal norms have really showed us that to be popular, you're in like a big group and like you're the loudest, most outgoing person. And to be honest, I wanted to be that way. And I really struggled because it not only didn't come natural, but it was very unnatural. And so I think people could sense that. And so it was me wanting to be something else because I thought that that was important. And really just like having to do a lot of work on myself and realize like, wow, actually, it's really powerful to not only enjoy your own time, but to be able to connect with people on a one-on-one basis or in small groups is so powerful. And if that's what works for you, that's really important. So yeah, growing up, I really struggled with that. My parents are really interesting. One is more on the introverted side. I'd say my mom is like kind of an ambivert. I consider myself that too, meaning, we are really social in small groups of people. And my dad is like the extrovert. He'll go to like a restaurant by himself and sit at the bar and chat to the bartender or like make friends with the person next to him. Like that is his idea of a good time. So my parents were really different and, they were super supportive, but yeah, I think, you don't always know the right thing to say. And on top of that, I was extremely sensitive. My feelings were hurt really easily. It didn't always feel easy, but I definitely had some really supportive people along the way, that helped me. But, it's hard. People don't always know what to do. And I think they want to comfort you by saying, just be yourself or just be more outgoing. And you're like, I don't know how.
Did you ever find that, friends just would get frustrated with you because maybe you reacted sensitively towards a situation, or maybe you took something that they said or they did a little too close to heart, and they're just like, stop being so sensitive, let's go, like, move on type thing? Like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I actually have chills thinking of that because I did a workshop in the summer that was for introverted and sensitive women. And this was one of the questions I asked them. I'm like, growing up, did people say things like, stop being so sensitive, don't take things so personally? It happened all the time. And to be honest, as sensitive people, typically we hate confrontation. So if people hurt my feelings, or if they did something that I didn't like, I wouldn't speak up about it. And so I would get in this really terrible dance of like either talking behind people's backs or like, sharing with my mom and like, crying on the phone or just keeping it in and pushing it down, feeling like there was something wrong with me when really it sometimes comes down to having a brave conversation and being okay with it going either way. But I mean, I didn't have the tools for that growing up. So, there was a lot of like very teary nights and feeling like I didn't belong. And, that's a really great question. Yeah, it's definitely not easy. So, yeah.
I think the one thing that I still struggle with the most, because now through being in jobs and being forced to be extroverted because now you have to talk to customers and all that stuff, I've kind of developed that tool where I can be extroverted when needed.
Yeah.
And then I will withdraw to get my kind of alone time and to kind of decompress from having to be so on all the time and forcing myself to do that. But the one area that I've always struggled with is the confrontation. So dealing with those difficult conversations or situations and speaking your mind or saying how you feel and dealing with what comes at you during that situation.
Yeah, it's not easy. I think of a lot of situations, work environments especially. I think we're all kind of conditioned too that we want to be liked. And so as a person that also wanted to be liked, I was kind of always the yes person. I was the people pleaser. And again, it was that level of I wasn't comfortable confronting the person, or if my boss asked me to do something that was honestly just like very much like under my pay grade type of thing, or just like something I was like, why am I still being asked to do this? It was really hard. And for years I would just shove it down and I would say, sure. And I'd put a smile on my face and it felt like shit. And again, it was calling my mom in the car, and my mom is so wonderful. She's like, you need to like speak up for yourself. And so it was a process. Like, it is never just like, go in there and ask for the raise or like tell them you don't want to do it. It's like, that is so much easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I started, really listening to podcasts that like made me feel really empowered and confident, and understanding that, brave conversations are a really important part of life. And I would practice in the car. I would write things down. And something that I work with my clients is knowing that, it's your own well-being is the most important thing. And just sometimes you need to really rip off the Band-Aid and go in and have that conversation and be okay with whatever the outcome is. There was a situation at work years ago where I had to confront my boss about something she was asking me to do that made me feel uncomfortable. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I recently posted about this. I went in the bathroom. I did like a power pose before. And if anyone that's listening doesn't know what that is, this woman named Amy Cuddy, she has a great TED Talk on it. Basically, you put your arms up in the air. It's called like a victory pose. And it does kind of help. I think it helps like circulate some sort of maybe oxytocin. So anyways, I did that and I walked back in the room. I said, hey, do you have a second for a chat? And we had the chat, and guess what? I didn't die. I didn't faint. She didn't yell at me. I didn't get fired. It was fine. And I was also prepared going into that conversation that if she was going to let me go, I knew that it wasn't the right job for me. So, find yourself in the story, whether that's in a relationship or a job. Your own well-being is priority. But yeah, it doesn't feel easy.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. So what led you to finally creating Christy Vale Studio? So you were in design, that's completely different than where you are now.
Yeah.
So what was that pivoting moment that made you decide to shift completely and change careers?
Yeah, so I was in design for a long time. And when I first went out on my own, which was over a year ago now, I was doing design. So it was a lot more, I was kind of following what my, previous bosses had done. I was working with design clients. I actually just recently, within the month, wrapped up my last design client and said I'm only available for coaching because that's where my heart and head is. And I need to honor that. And that's where everything is flowing. But yeah, so I work with a business coach. She's awesome. And when I first started my studio, I told her, I wanted to start a podcast. And I mean, you're a podcaster. It's the best way to connect with people. And I just this spark got lit in me of not only talking to people about their own personal growth journey, but realizing that I actually have a lot that I can help people with. And so when I first started, I was just doing design, and behind the scenes, I was building the podcast, and I was actually building my coaching client services. And I worked with my business coach on that. She'd been pushing me for a year. She's like, you need to start this. People are asking you about it, or people are noticing. My parents say, my fiance says, so much has changed for you. You should start teaching people how to, be more comfortable as an introverted and sensitive person. And so the coaching started at the beginning of 2019, and it's really taken off, and it was one of those things. I'm a true believer. Yes, we can have a lot of things that we're passionate about, but I really believe if you want something to take off, the more energy you put into it, the more it'll take off. So I chose to put that into coaching, and I'm so glad I did. And every single day I'm how do I get to work with such amazing people who are literally my ideal, not only client, but friend. I have chills again because it's really cool when you can create something and also help people. So it's my favorite thing in the world.
I love that. So being an entrepreneur as an introverted, sensitive person, what were aspects of this new role that you were challenged by? So I know that I struggle with putting myself out there and networking because obviously those big group settings and kind of walking up to strangers and introducing myself kind of really makes me want to sweat right now, just thinking about it. So what do you find to be a little bit of a challenge?
Yeah, all those things. Definitely putting yourself out there. This is really funny. This is kind of something I now help people with is being comfortable, being more visible. And so I seem to attract a lot of people that also are either aspiring entrepreneurs or are current business owners that want to be able to feel more confident going on video. And so that's something that we work on. So yeah, going on video was something that I struggled with before. It was like, the fear of judgment, the fear of what are people going to think, especially those people that, follow you that maybe have known you since like high school. And they're like, what is she doing now? So that's a huge one. Totally understand where you're coming from with like networking events. The word networking kind of makes my skin crawl. I think a lot of introverted people feel that way, but I will say, this has been a big realization in the last 6 months. Going to events is so powerful, especially when you start to put yourself out there. You'll notice that people will start recognizing you and they'll be like, hey, I think I recognize you from Instagram, which is a really weird feeling, but it's cool. And it's so great to put yourself out there online, but it's kind of like that magnetic thing when you're really visible online and then you meet someone in person and it's like the full meal deal. Like they're just like, they're sold. They're like, yes, you're an amazing person. Like, and I can really, I can really verify that from meeting you in person. So, and just as a little tip, like if you're an introverted person going to an event, I know it's not easy. Sometimes I'll go with friends or they'll usually convince me to go or they'll encourage me to go. That's a great way of going. And, find speakers that you really like. Go there with a purpose. There's so many different ways to start conversations. Like, if you're wanting to get in a group, don't just stand there and kind of linger and hold your drink. Like, get engaged in the conversation. It can feel scary, but it's so much more awkward if you're just standing there. And also remember as an introvert, like, yes, numbers of people feel really daunting, but you guys are amazing connectors. So whether you set an intention to to talk to one person at the event, to make one connection or 2 or 3, remember that you're really good at that and that is what your strength is. And before the event and after, I always buffer a lot of alone time because that's the biggest thing with introverts is we actually can be very social, but we need to recharge alone.
100%. Every time, like even if I'm out with family or friends and, they're having like a dinner party or whatever, and there's like karaoke or something like that. And I'm having so much fun, but I'm like, when I get home and I get to put my pajamas on and Friends is on Netflix and I'm just alone, I'm like, I cannot wait. I am like needing that now. Yeah. It's so funny.
It's the best.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
Oh my God, 100%. No. Yeah.
So there's so many ups and downs being an entrepreneur. Obviously, it's kind of like a roller coaster. Honestly, you go from one emotion to another. Every day is different. One day you could feel like you're accomplishing the world and everything's just lining up. And then the next day you're like, lose a client or everything kind of just falls apart or your website crashes or something. You come across your budget and you're like, crap, I overspent big time.
Yeah.
Or you get stuck in that whole comparison game, which is a loop that I tend to get stuck in.
Okay.
How do you navigate those ups and downs?
Yeah. This is something I also love too, is just having like a really healthy mindset. And like even the people with the best mindsets have really crappy days and it totally happens. But finding ways to really elevate your mood. So whether that, for me as an entrepreneur, flexibility is like my favorite thing. So yeah, a lot of days I'll have back-to-back, coaching calls, but there's a lot of time in my schedule where I actually create that white space and I'll go for a walk. And I swear to God, a walk cures like most problems for me, or I come back with like a more clear head, or I just feel better. A lot of downtime for me is really important. I used to way overschedule myself socially. And again, as an introvert, like we need to recharge if we want to continue to give that energy to our business. So there's a lot of things like that. Self-comparison, I totally understand that. I think any market that you're in, people are going to say podcasting's oversaturated, coaching's oversaturated, designers oversaturated. Like it's, real estate. Are you really going to be like, you're going to hear that from so many different people. And I think it's just an indicator of where their mindset's at. So I just honestly really try to stay focused on what I'm doing. And I really try to go on Instagram's my favorite social media platform. And when I go on there, I try to go with an intention. So whether that is connecting with someone, supporting someone, or putting myself out there, sharing something that I'm doing. I try not to get caught up in the scroll, and it does happen, but that's where I find the comparison really creeps in. So that's something that I do that I find really, really helpful.
I love that. So have you ever felt that imposter syndrome where you kind of think, who am I to be teaching this? Or there's so many more educated people that are doing similar things to me. Why would anybody come to me for this when there's so much available out there? I think, again, when you were talking about there's so much saturation and all these things, how do you kind of stay in your own lane and not let all that noise kind of get you down and take you off your path?
Yeah, totally. Honestly, I think my coach was huge for that. Huge shout out to Kelly Track. She's awesome and she's a really close friend of mine. But yeah, that's kind of where I find coaches to be especially helpful, is when we're getting in our own way. A lot of the time it's someone reminding you, hey, you do get people results, or, hey, you know what, you are totally on the right path. It's those reminders, and it's surrounding yourself with really supportive people. I also love to see, there are so many people that I specifically admire that don't have a PhD in research and, looking at introverted people. It's whatever it is that you want to do, your own life experience is so important. And I've just noticed that for myself. It's just incredible. If you really look at what you put your most, attention into. For me, that has always been personal growth and educating myself and listening to audiobooks and taking courses. And so you don't necessarily need the PhD or to take another course. I think a lot of people let a piece of paper hold them back. And then it's they finally get it. And then their problem is putting themselves out there. So I would say most people are holding themselves back.
I totally agree. So what are your thoughts on vibration and how we can elevate it to make sure that we're attracting the right circumstances, the right people that are going to help us grow and help us to continue on that journey of, self-discovery and figuring out what your purpose is in life and helping other people as well?
Yeah. So as sensitive people, we especially feel other people's emotions. It's just something that happens. So if you are spending a lot of time with a friend or a coworker that's constantly complaining, you might find yourself either feeling really down or constantly complaining. So start surrounding yourself with people that are not always positive. It's not about that, but people that are driven, people that are motivated, people that are also into their own personal growth. It's really, really important. And yeah, I love the idea of raising your vibration. I talked about this in the summer's workshop. There's so many ways to do that, whether that is just, moving the energy around. So whether that's for me, it usually looks like going for a run on the seawall or putting in a podcast. Sometimes it's dancing, listening to music. Sometimes it's breath work. Sometimes it's meditation. Sometimes it's writing. It's going to be different for every person, but yeah, finding ways for you to elevate your own mood and not rely on other people for that. This is so huge. I know it's great to have a support system, but know that you do have the tools inside yourself to be able to do that.
I love that. You're so full of goodness.
Awesome.
For someone that needs to be in control. So this is a big one. I saw a post that you had on control, and it definitely hit me close to home because I need to control things around me. Just given my past experiences and whatnot is kind of my safety place.
Yeah.
But again, you can never have control. Right? Life is going to throw you a curveball. Things are going to happen. So how do you suggest that people who feel the tendencies to be in control at all times, how can they deal with those situations in life where things get completely out of whack and takes them kind of in that fearful zone?
Yeah. It's so hard. I think we think that there's a lot of situations that are quote unquote guaranteed or safe. So for me, I definitely feel I heard the programming of getting a corporate job, a company that's been around for a long time, you'll be able to grow and climb the ladder and you'll be set for life. I would hear that. Or, make sure you marry a really nice guy, just all these funny things. And it's there is no, even with jobs that feel secure, or like even getting married and having a piece of paper, like nothing is a guarantee. There's uncertainty in every single situation. And so I feel like I just see so many people be really scared of uncertainty. And it's just so frustrating because they decide that something feels unsafe. And so they hold back from going after what they truly want, and they stay really stuck. And yeah, as for control, I hear you. I feel like it's also a part of being someone that is sensitive. You want to control kind of your environment. You want to protect yourself. I hear that. So yeah, just finding ways to, honestly, I'm always in the practice of trying to release control, whether it's controlling the outcome of my business or controlling my partner because I think that I know the best. It's always going to be a practice. And it's just having the awareness when you're feeling that control creep in of like, what am I trying to control? And really taking a look almost as an outsider and being like, do I need to have such a tight grip on this? Because I can tell you every time I start to loosen the grip again, or loosen the grip, I start to create that space and then things actually come in. It's never when I'm like really pushing things.
Gotcha. Okay. Being introverted, again, when we're talking about fear here, there's a lot of fear involved with being introverted about different things.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend for someone to kind of open themselves up to new experiences and to push themselves out of their comfort zones and try new things and, don't kind of shelter yourself? Because you're going to miss out on a lot, I find, if you stay in that comfort zone and you kind of stay sheltered and you don't try new things, or at least push yourself in little steps to try new things.
Yeah. So I'll give like a personal story. So, last summer I did something that felt really out of my comfort zone. I listened to this awesome podcast called Almost 30, and they do like world tours, and they happen to be in Seattle. I'm in Vancouver, and I had like put it out on Instagram being like, anyone want to come with me? And I didn't hear anything back. And I went ahead and I knew I had to do this. I bought the ticket. And so that kind of held me accountable because I knew on the day if I didn't have the ticket, I wouldn't be going. But I will say like driving, like this was so out of my comfort zone. Driving to Seattle by myself for this event, going alone, I was like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? And I literally sat in my car and I was like, I don't think I'm going to go in. I kept doing this, like up until the moment that I walked in, I was like, I could turn around. And I walked in, my adrenaline was pumping and I looked around, but I started seeing other people were there by themselves too. That was really inspiring. And I saw other people connecting. And so I'll say, if you're an introvert, find those events that, people really encourage you to go and meet people and go by yourself. Like, it's not about like going with your clique. Like, so from that event, I met two incredible girls who are friends of mine today. We chat all the time. We support each other. And we ended up going for dinner after the event. And the event was just incredible. And I knew like, even if I met no one, I had to go for a reason. And so if you feel called to do something, don't let this fear of like, you're going to be sitting by yourself hold you back. And if the first event feels uncomfortable, that's okay. I was very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, it's important to just go and see what comes from that experience. And like, it's really, really cool. All I can say is amazing things happen outside of your comfort zone. So I always try to tell myself that when I'm about to do something that feels scary, especially as an introvert.
That's very interesting that you went to that. Caitlin Bristow is having a podcast tour and she's coming to Vancouver.
Oh.
So I'm like, you should definitely go to that too.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, that's awesome that you went to the one for the Almost 30.
Yeah.
I've been listening to them as well. So that should have been really interesting. That's awesome. I love that.
Totally.
So knowing everything you know now, what advice would you have for your younger self?
Yeah, I would just say it's so hard. I feel like, especially I'm imagining myself like being in middle school was really hard. I transferred from another school where I knew no one. I had lunches where I was like honestly sitting alone, and it was some of the hardest days of my life. And I had basically a best friend that I felt like picked me out of a crowd and said, hey, do you want to come hang out with us? And she's still one of my best friends today. So I would say like a couple of things, like if you notice that people are by themselves, like invite them in, say hi to them, make a conversation. And also you can be that person too. Like have the courage to go up and say hi to people. Or if you're at an event or if you're, whatever, if you're at a coffee shop, like I try to actually implement this in little ways, whether it's asking for like the Wi-Fi password or like chatting with the barista a little bit longer than feels comfortable, like start to like push yourself out a little bit like that. It doesn't need to feel like a full, like immersive experience. You can do it in little ways and like build up to those bigger experiences. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Little baby steps, right? Try
Totally.
new things in different situations and atmospheres and whatnot. And then it'll just come more naturally.
Totally.
So I am a huge romance freak. I love, and I want to learn all about this relationship of yours. So is your partner an introvert as well, or is he extroverted?
Yeah, I would definitely classify him more as an extrovert.
Okay.
Like his name is Warren and he is just so charismatic. I find people are drawn to him. He had a really interesting upbringing. He grew up in the Middle East and just really, really interesting guy. And I think that's what I was drawn to. He's got a lot of great stories and he's just really charismatic and friendly and easy to talk to. And yeah, very much like if we're out somewhere, he's like, okay, where to next? So that hasn't always been easy because I'm definitely the person after like a dinner party, like, okay, I'm going home. Like, or like we were in a loud bar recently for a friend's birthday and like 9:30 rolled around and everyone's like, where are we going dancing? And I was like, I'm out of here.
Bedtime.
Totally. And now he jokes with me. He's like, time to go home and recharge. And then he'll carry on with the night and I'll go home. And it wasn't always easy, but, the more we're just like aware of each other's, like what lights each other up, it's really helpful. And then we do things together, we'll hang out one-on-one, go for like a nice intimate dinner that we both love. So there's definitely ways of combining, but yeah, it's definitely interesting navigating, being more introverted and someone else being more extroverted.
At the beginning, given that you guys are both very different in those situations, did you have to communicate quite a bit so that he understood where you were coming from and you understood where he was coming from, and finding how to balance that so you guys were both getting what you needed and like, leaving early and he's okay with that and you go home and he just continues on, like
totally
finding that balance. Did you guys communicate a lot? Did you find that there was some struggles at the beginning to finding that?
It was hard. Like, it was definitely challenging. It was a lot of the time, I think he was like, why are you going home so early? And I'd be like, well, why do you always have to stay out so late? It was like a lot of like push and pull. So yeah, it wasn't easy. And there was times where I felt like I was obligated to do things and he probably felt obligated to stay home certain times if I was staying home. So it was a lot of that. And it's just like finding ways to find what you really enjoy doing together and also accept how the other person like really likes to be. And so honestly, we do a lot of things separately. We're definitely not the couple that is like attached at the hip. We never have been, but just having the awareness and acceptance around that has made our relationship just so amazing. We've been together almost 8 years. And so it hasn't always been easy. I'll just say that. And he would say the same thing, but being accepting of what the other person wants and needs, and not always feeling like you don't always have to meet them there. Sometimes you have to do what's best for you, and also just trust that that's what's best for them. It doesn't serve him if I'm going to be out at 11 o'clock at night being bitter and wishing I was home and I'm yawning. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not fun for him, right? So
totally.
I love that. So are there any tools that you would suggest that have helped you in your journey for other women kind of going through the same thing? So whether it's like certain books or podcasts that you listen to or apps that you download on your phone, things like that?
Yeah, so many things. So I really like meditation. I don't do it every day, but I do it at least a couple times a week, and it just helps helps quiet my mind and not overanalyze every single thing. I found, that's a struggle too. Again, as a sensitive person, it was like I would take it personally sometimes when he would do certain things. And so I find meditation actually really helps to calm my nervous system. That's a great tool. Honestly, I talk a lot about being introverted on my own podcast. Susan Cain is someone I really admire. She has a book called Quiet. I reference that a lot with my clients, The Power of Introverts, and how, you don't have to be that loud, charismatic person to be successful or to be a salesperson or to run your own business, or to be a leader. She is wonderful. She has a great TED Talk on that. So those are a couple of great resources that I particularly love.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out because I definitely want to listen to that.
Yeah.
Your coaching services. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. What do they entail? What do you offer your clients?
Yeah. So right now I have 2 different packages. The first one is called Discover Yourself. So that was, when I first started the journey, that is for the person that is probably either brand new to personal growth or kind of just started dabbling in it. And it's really a way to live more consciously and understand that being sensitive and or introverted, not all my clients identify as introverted. So I just want to say that, but it's, for one, it's having the awareness and the acceptance around that. And it's figuring out how you can live bigger as a sensitive and or introverted person. I see so many people playing small and limiting themselves in their jobs or in their relationships or in things they do because they think I'm not the quote unquote person to do that. And those are self-limiting beliefs. And again, a lot of those are from what we've learned in society or what we've seen in, the extroverted, successful person. So the first one, Discover Yourself, is really about, being not only okay with who you are, but accepting yourself and thriving exactly as you are, but on a bigger scale. And then Say Yes to Your Dreams. So I was noticing in my coaching, I tend to attract a lot of introverted and sensitive entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. And I noticed I started helping them with certain things. And so creating a really specific client avatar or really understanding what your values are and understanding that honestly, not everyone's going to be your ideal customer or client. So we do a lot of that type of work together. Say Yes to Your Dreams is also about maybe the person that's in a career that they know is not for them and they want to make a big transition. It's people that are ready to make a change. Also, I work with people that are in, either the relationship that doesn't feel right or they want to attract a great partner. Say Yes to Your Dreams can be in a couple different ways, but I will say a lot of the people I see are mostly aspiring entrepreneurs or new business owners.
Gotcha. Well, this has been jam-packed with so much good information. But if anybody wants to learn more about you, the services that you offer, and all this advice that you kind of put out there through the podcast and your Instagram, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find my podcast. It's Connected with Christy Vale. This probably will come out later, but I'm having a contest right now. So anyways, it's on my website, Christy Vale Studio. Instagram is definitely my favorite place to connect with people. So absolutely give me a follow, say hello, tell us what you loved about this episode and let us know, if you're an introvert or a sensitive person or what you resonated with. I love connecting with people in there. So I'm Christy Vale Studio everywhere, website, Instagram. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for taking the time to share your journey and your passion, but as well for giving us such valuable advice on stepping outside of those comfort zones that we like to live in and overcoming limitations that an introvert can have, really.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I'm just so honored to be on the show.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to revueblanc.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another Unplugged conversation.